Who are a few of the dumbest criminals around? Let's find out, starting with number 5, Seeking Hands. Kaley Renae Medina has been arrested for going after her 61-year-old date in a fit of anger. Medina was a 26-year-old sugar baby who thought she had found her perfect sugar daddy on seekingarrangement.com, which is now simply seeking.com. Her date thought he was meeting the perfect girl for an arrangement he was seeking, but obviously he was wrong. Seeking.com is a place where young women meet older men that they call sugar daddies. You can probably guess what these arrangements are like. And, like anything online, it's not without its risks considering the type of people who are likely to sign up for sites such as Seeking.com, such as Medina, who isn't a stranger to getting arrested. Medina had one meetup with the victim, and he decided he wasn't interested in seeing her again. However, Medina was very much interested in still seeing the man, probably because he smelled like money. So she did the only rational thing you can do to attract the attention of an older, wealthy man. She turned up at his house at 2:30 a.m. and asked to be let in. The victim probably didn't want to leave her standing outside, so he let her in and gave her some wine, which ended up being the biggest mistake he made that day. Medina then asked him for $2,000, and he politely declined, saying he didn't have that kind of money. So Medina went into a crazy rage and started destroying things around the house. She smashed the victim's flat-screen TV, his custom-made entertainment center, a painting, and put holes in his walls. When that wasn't enough, she decided to pour detergent on her victim's head, causing injuries. You may think that would be all, but you'd be wrong. After pouring detergent all over his head, Medina stole a bunch of stuff such as a surveillance camera, a Dyson hairdryer, the man's passport, and an Apple Pro Max iPhone. Because why not? The dumb thing is, it's not like she wasn't going to be easily identified and arrested since she had to sign up for the site and the guy had her number. Number 4, the double check. A dim-witted Florida man attempted a bizarre robbery at a phone repair store wearing a cardboard box over his head as a disguise. It worked in Metal Gear, right? The heist took place around 4 a.m. when the thief aimed to make off with a stash of 19 iPhones and $8,000 in cash for a total value of $15,000. Surveillance footage captured the intruder's unusual antics as he struggled to break open a glass cabinet that housed the iPhones. At first, the cardboard box concealed his face, hiding his identity. But during his clumsy attempt to nab the phones, he finally lifted the box for a moment to get a better look at what phones he was gathering, in front of a security camera. The box-wearing robber's move proved to be his downfall. The store owner, Jeremias Berganza, came across the surveillance footage and recognized the man. He quickly took action, alerting local authorities, who arrested the thief after finding him casually enjoying a drink with friends at a nearby liquor store. Why he was so concerned about which phone he was stealing enough to lift the box is anyone's guess. Even cheap phones are still worth something, but being picky caused him a world of trouble. And while he looked stupid in his box, as the saying goes, if it works, it's not stupid. Too bad he was stupid. Number 3, all in his name. Patrick Parker Walsh may be the CEO of AirSign Airship Group, but that doesn't mean he's very smart. Patrick was sentenced to jail for 5.5 years for stealing from the government in possibly the dumbest way possible. This more air than brains guy committed his fraud by applying for $7.8 million in payroll protection funding from the government during the pandemic. But he only needed $2 million of what he requested. So to trick the government into giving him that amount of money, Patrick submitted fake loan applications that claimed that he needed much more than his business actually required. But after getting his hands on the funds, Patrick did the dumbest thing possible. He used the money to make vanity purchases, such as a private 2-acre island in the Gulf of Mexico off the coast of Yankeetown, Florida. He also used part of the money to pay off the 78-acre farm where he lives south of Gainesville. Lastly, he used the money to put a down payment on a luxury ski lodge in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. All these purchases showed that Patrick wasn't some broke little man trying to save his business. He was looking to take advantage of a situation. According to his own lawyer, he wasn't even a particularly good businessman and made a bunch of bad decisions taking out high-interest loans. And while he was pretty well off, he wasn't clever enough to realize that his extravagant purchases would attract government attention. Perhaps he shouldn't have spent all of that money all at once and should have been more creative in hiding it. Come on, buying a 2-acre island in his own name isn't the smartest thing to buy with stolen funds because it's all traceable. We aren't exactly trying to teach anyone how to be better criminals or anything, but if he were smarter, he would have taken the money out either in cash and spent it slowly while pretending to have gambled it all away. Or he could have given money away to family members and have them put assets in their names while having them open up some fake businesses to launder the cash. Number 2. Her mugshot portfolio. Rihanna Bell Brooke is a troubled young woman who's gone viral for having a strange medley of 11 mugshots. She's been busted for everything from shoplifting to stalking. The strange thing is that Rihanna seems to enjoy getting arrested, going by the smiles in all of her mugshots and also commenting on her posts by Mugshotty on Instagram. Brooke's first arrest was in 2019 when she was just 18, and since then she's made an appearance in 10 more mugshots. The obvious reason that she's so popular on Mugshotties is that she's good looking, and she also has that average girl next door looks. She's not the sort of person you'd expect to see in one mugshot, let alone 11. Some of her fans say they need a documentary on her criminal escapades, while others warn her, saying she's ruining her future by getting into so much trouble with the police. If you're enjoying this video, be sure to stay tuned right here to find out how this girl tried to steal $1 million from her sugar daddy. Number 1. The Serious User. Aram Shabani came to the UK as an Iranian refugee, but he was determined to make something of himself. So, in order to accomplish this, he got into illegal substance trading and became one of the biggest crime lords in the UK. As a wealthy crime boss, Aram lived his best life. He partied hard, stayed in luxury hotels, drove luxurious vehicles, built up a £5 million property empire, and acquired a collection of expensive art such as pieces from Banksy and Andy Warhol. He also had about £1 million in cash on hand just sitting around, like you do. That's all aside from the small fortune on cosmetic surgeries, including a nose job and a hair transplant. Aram flew under the radar by claiming his wealth came from his £5 million property empire. But he didn't build his criminal empire alone. He had help from his mom, Fatma Shabani, who helped him launder his money through mortgage crime and laundering the illegal proceeds of his crimes. But Fatma couldn't help him forever, as both mother and child soon came under police scrutiny. When Fatma became wanted in Europe, she fled to her native Syria, where she hid. When Fatma found out that her son was in trouble, she returned to the UK to try and help, but was immediately arrested at the airport. And how did Aram, the kingpin, get busted? Daredevil. Just kidding. Actually, the police raided his luxury apartment and found an unholy cachet of illegal substances. They also found over £1 million in cash and 11 money counting machines, which all prove that he had been running a pretty complex underground operation. Luckily, Aram had a genius excuse for having so many banned substances in his home. Apparently, he claimed to be a serious user and that everything was for personal use. Oh, okay. Aram also said that his trips to Colombia were only to have parties and meet pretty women. Surprisingly, the police didn't fall for his excuses and immediately hauled him to prison. In court, the authorities were able to prove that Aram was a kingpin and he was sentenced to 37 years in jail. His mother, on the other hand, was sentenced to 10 months in prison for her crimes. And okay, we're not dealers, and we don't necessarily know all the ins and outs of the trade, but it seems like keeping an insane amount of product in your house could be very problematic. Why keep it where you live? Didn't he watch The Wire?
Israeli Lynn Helena Halfin was charged with fraud against her husband, Richard Rappaport. The fraud allegations say she tried to steal $1 million from him during their brief marriage. Both Rappaport and Halfin refused to provide any information about their marriage, such as how they met. What little we know about their relationship has come from records and interviews. It's believed that Halfin met Rappaport at a benefit or social event in Tampa Bay, Florida. Why? They were first photographed together in February 2019 at a benefit for the Holocaust Museum in the Vinoy Renaissance Hotel in St. Petersburg, Florida. However, we don't know what led both of them to the event. However, investigators do know who Rappaport is and why a good-looking younger woman might want to attend benefits with him. Rappaport is the founder and owner of Panther Medical, a company that distributes medical devices and equipment to the Tampa Bay area. Panther Medical is a highly successful company. At its helm, Rappaport became a millionaire. For the past couple of decades, he supported benefits across Florida, especially causes related to his Jewish heritage, like the Holocaust Museum. Rappaport fell in love with his heritage when he visited Israel as a teenager. The nation had just established itself a few years before Rappaport traveled there. As a young Jewish teen, the first ever Jewish state was something he took immense pride in. When Rappaport started making money through Panther Medical, he donated to different Israeli charity funds. He gave to the Jewish National Fund and supported projects like playgrounds, the Alexander Muss High School, and a rehabilitation center for disabled children. His daughter Titus inherited his passion for Israel and also donated to Israeli national causes. He took Titus there when she was young, and she fell in love with the country as much as he did. Both Titus and her father make massive donations to these charitable organizations. Titus also sits on the board of directors for the Jewish National Fund. And since her father's disastrous marriage to Halfin, she's been at the forefront of media relations. Almost all of the statements on her father's history with Israel came from her. However, she spent most of her time going after Halfin, and not just legally. Titus has said publicly that she believes Halfin took advantage of her father's advanced age. She took the reins after her father failed to file charges against Halfin, who he wanted to give the benefit of the doubt, despite there being overwhelming evidence indicating she tried to steal from him. Titus quickly stepped in and saw the situation for what it was, a scam, though it took a while for her and the police to convince him that Halfin was scamming him. Rappaport was a man in love. He'd found a beautiful young woman from a country he dedicated his life to supporting. He wasn't about to let her go so easily. In the same legal document, he asked that Halfin not be deported back to her native Israel, even though she represented the nation he loves and a new life adventure. Halfin didn't feel the same way. The evidence of theft was overwhelming, and Rappaport couldn't deny that his beautiful young wife was trying to rob him blind. Halfin's first attempt at stealing from Rappaport took place inside a Tampa Amscot Bank branch. 3 months after their August wedding, Halfin walked into the bank building with $1 million Wells Fargo cashier's check. After identifying herself, they invited Halfin to sit down with a bank teller. She explained that these were legitimate checks signed by her husband, who wanted to buy a $1 million yacht with the money. Halfin said Rappaport sent her, his wife, here on his behalf. However, the bank tellers had a protocol. The person whose name was on the check had to be present for them to authorize a cash out. They denied Halfin, and she went home empty-handed. Halfin walked back into the bank a few hours later with 3 new checks. Each one had Rappaport's name on them, along with a $333,000 sum of money. This time, she showed them her Israeli passport and her visa as identification. However, the bank tellers still refused to cash her checks. But before Halfin left, the tellers captured photos of the suspicious woman's passport, her visa, and the 3 checks. Then after Halfin left, the tellers decided to contact the authorities, who started investigating her. Meanwhile, Halfin was back at the drawing board. Her original plan, which was to write her husband's name on $1 million worth of checks, didn't work. She'd have to get more creative. But before she could come up with a better plan, Halfin got a call from Rappaport asking why she tried to cash the checks, followed by an even more important question: where are the checks? Halfin didn't know, but the police looked up Rappaport's contact information and asked him if he'd signed those checks. He, of course, said that was nonsense and didn't know what they were talking about, then called his wife of 4 months. His daughter, Titus, was there in the room with him as Halfin explained herself, though, as Titus recalls, Halfin spent most of the call berating Rappaport for not trusting her enough to handle his money. When he asked for his checks back, she only got angrier. The next day, the police interviewed Rappaport with Titus at his side. That's when he told them he thought Halfin was innocent and that he was giving her the benefit of the doubt. Nevertheless, investigators still found Halfin and interrogated her. They presented the Israeli national with photocopies of her passport, visa, and the checks collected by the bank as evidence. So Halfin told them the truth, her version of the truth. Halfin explained to the investigators that she had to forge the checks. Rappaport's family pressured him to withhold money from her because they thought she was a gold digger. So, to protect herself financially, she tried cashing a few checks. Halfin told police she shipped the checks to her sister in Israel when cashing them didn't work. The police explained that what she did was a crime, and Halfin agreed to ask her sister to send the checks back to Florida. The police decided Halfin's promise was good enough and left. However, it was far from over. Halfin had indeed sent the checks out of Florida, but not to her sister in Israel. In reality, the $333,000 checks were mailed to Orlando. Halfin knew trying to cash the checks herself wouldn't work. She'd have to hire a middleman who knew how to cash forged checks. The mystery person she hired was from Orlando. After Halfin mailed them the checks, they traveled to New Jersey and cashed the first check at a company called Check Pros. Then, 5 days later, they cashed a second check at the same company. However, they never got to cash the third check. Investigators had already been alerted of the first two and ordered Wells Fargo to freeze the third. When the news broke out, no one knew who the mystery person from Orlando was. Since they hadn't technically been charged with a crime, no one was at liberty to release their name, a name that remains a mystery to this day. The authorities gathered more evidence and met with Rappaport in December. Even if Rappaport wasn't willing to give her up, they wanted Halfin. They asked him if he'd heard anything from her lately about the checks. Rappaport told police that Halfin was meeting her sister in Boston to pick up the checks. Halfin told him that she had booked a flight to New York on December 15th, and once she returned to Tampa with the checks, everything would be resolved. The police, however, didn't believe the story. They kept questioning Rappaport, asking him if he believed the story. When the investigators poked him some more, Rappaport finally gave in. He admitted Halfin was probably conning him, a truth his daughter tried to convince him of on their wedding day and every day after. The investigators went looking for Halfin. As they dug, they discovered Halfin actually rescheduled her flight for December 16th, most likely hoping to throw off authorities trying to catch her. On the 16th, police investigators sent a squad down to Tampa Bay International Airport and arrested Halfin just before she got on the plane. They brought her into the station for questioning like normal, though there was one tiny problem. Halfin wasn't American. She was staying in the United States on a visa, but wasn't a citizen. So the police detained Halfin for 13 long months while they further investigated her scam, then offered her a plea deal. Halfin accepted the deal and was deported back to Israel as a condition of the plea agreement. You're probably wondering how Halfin got off so easily. She escaped prison time using one of the most bizarre defenses in court history. She blamed her criminal actions on her psychic. Throughout her time in Tampa, Halfin met with a young psychic named J.C. Wasso. In front of the judge, the court, and Rappaport, Halfin claimed Wasso put a spell on her. This spell, Halfin says, caused her to scam Rappaport, not greed. She says Wasso convinced her that stealing from Rappaport was the only option. Wasso also asked Halfin to give her the money and anything else she stole, including some of Rappaport's jewelry. The Florida state prosecutors recorded Halfin's testimony and went after Wasso. They arrested the self-proclaimed psychic and charged her with several crimes. The prosecutors charged Wasso with 7 different counts of grand theft, several counts of fraud, and 1 count of money laundering. They also compiled and submitted 800 pages of evidence to the court. Her attorney, Glenn Lansky, who's known for defending white-collar criminals, says the state refused to offer his client any plea bargains. He said they were throwing the whole deck at her. Whether or not that was a tarot card pun, we can't know for sure. Still, Florida prosecutors went after Wasso, intending to send her to prison for as long as possible. Since they had already deported Halfin, extraditing her to the U.S. wasn't easy. Lansky believes the prosecutors were scapegoating his client because they lost the actual perpetrator. He says that Halfin committed the crimes and admitted to lying over 50 times during a deposition. Nevertheless, Wasso will appear before a judge in the summer of 2022. She's up against a team of prosecutors on a mission to avenge one of Florida's wealthiest and most generous residents. The psychic's future isn't looking too bright, but she probably saw that coming. Right?
Click to watch one of these next videos. Let us know in the comment section what you'd rather have. The ability to teleport anywhere or have a robot clone of yourself that does whatever you tell it to do.